It's good to speak with you today, Bob. And the topic you have today is going to be an interesting one called the distraction of technologies and getting work done. Can you start by providing a brief background of yourself?
I am in the IT software development uh, industry, and I'm what's called an agile coach. And I coach a different way of approaching software development, and it's a team-based approach that involves uh, building high-performing teams and high. And in order to do that, you have to have a very high caliber, high focus group of people who don't take their eye off the ball. And part of that is everybody on that team being in the present and really listening and paying attention to what their teammates are discussing. So collaboration is a very important part of this.
And can you talk about what is it? What is this, the Agile, the principles, and why is it important, and how is it done?
Well, so the Agile, so it's based on a thing called the Agile Manifesto. And the Agile Manifesto was developed uh, about 12 years ago, and it was a bunch of the gurus in the industry said that they needed to, there needed to be a different way to approach software development. And make a long story short, many projects were failing, and there was a lot of pain around it, people working a lot of hours and a lot of animosity in the organizations. And so they basically came up with these four values. And the four values are individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And around these values are about 9 principles. Out of these values, a number of different development frameworks have evolved, and the one that's most popular is a framework called Scrum. And Scrum basically takes the software development approach and compresses it to say that a small team, 6 or 7 people, will work in what is a popular time frame of 10-day increments. And in that 10-day increments, at the end of that increment, they will deliver some type of working software. So the key to that is being able to form a team, and the foundation of forming a high-performing team is trust and collaboration and communication. Because you're working in such a tight time frame, it's very important that the team stays very focused on on meeting the goals that were set within that time frame. My role is to coach a team on how to do that, how to trust each other, how to communicate, how to stay focused. And around this, so the framework is really 2 or 3 different ceremonies. One of them is what they call a daily ceremony, where the team meets for 15 minutes. And it's basically a conversation where team members talk about what they had worked on, what they're going to work on for that day, so that they can communicate, collaborate, understand dependencies of how to get work done. Then there's the planning, which at the end of this 10-day cycle, the team sits down and plans out what the next 10 days will be, what they'll work on. And there's also a ceremony called a retrospective, which is a continuous improvement. They reflect on how the last cycle went and how they can be better at it. And the key to a retrospective is that people are in a safe space where they can speak their mind and express their satisfaction or dissatisfaction or frustrations. And one of the underlying things with that is that in order to feel safe, people need to know that they're being listened to and that people care about what they're saying. So which leads me to what I've seen as I've been doing this is that people are very distracted all the time. They have their phones out, they have their laptops out, some of them are texting, and it's not a conscious thing. It's a behavior, and and the thing that's interesting is that they miss things and they don't even know they're missing them. So even in a 15-minute conversation, they have trouble staying focused for 15 minutes. They can't not look at their phones. They can't not look at their laptops. And it's actually, it's for me, it's been very interesting because I will even say to a team when we're in our 15-minute conversation and when we're in these other ceremonies, everyone needs to turn their phone off or put their phone down and close their laptop. And it's almost like they can't. It's almost like they're addicted. They have to see this stuff. And what's funny about it is that if I take them one-on-one, and I've used this too. I'll take one team member. I'll go, suppose you and I were sitting in a restaurant or in a bar and you were telling me about something your child did and I pulled my phone out and started texting. Would you feel insulted? Would you feel like I wasn't interested in your life? Would you feel, like what you were saying had no value? And they all say yes, they would feel that way. And then the question I asked them is, well, then why do you think that it's okay for you to do that when there's a group of us and someone else is speaking? Don't you think that conveys the same message? And don't you think that that erodes trust if the person who's speaking doesn't think that you don't care enough about what they're saying, that you're going to look at their phone? And it's interesting because intellectually they know it, but behaviorally they don't know it. It's like an addiction. They can't connect the two. They know in their heads that what they're doing is not right, but their behavior it's like a habit. They can't stop. And it's actually a real challenge to get them to stop doing that, to get them to not look at their laptop, not look at their emails, not stare at their phone. And, you know, I've contemplated this a lot, and I wonder what the long-term impacts are going to be in our society too. And, even though I will, and what's funny is later, something will come up and somebody will go, well, I didn't know that. And I'll go, well, yeah, but it was brought up in our daily the other day. So-and-so brought it up. You weren't listening? And they look at you and they go, no, I guess I wasn't. But then they don't change their habit, right? They still got that phone. And so I think that, there's a line that technology crosses where it no longer is an enabler, it's a disabler. And especially with collaboration and people working face to face. I've been in situations where I've had team members who are literally within 20 feet of each other, email each other, as opposed to turning and talking to one another. And I also think that it's a way that they shield the interaction. Like I think people are becoming more uncomfortable with actually interacting with each other on a regular basis, especially at work, and that texting and email is a way to shield themselves.
This is a great topic, and thank you, Bob, for sharing. Did we cover all the points you wanted to make?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a question to the listeners of whether or not they see the same things and what are some of the strategies that they can think about to kind of, you know, change this behavior. Um, you know, it's a very painful process. I've gotten to the point where I've actually had to say to people, put your phones down. And it, or, for 15 minutes, you can put your phone down. Do you really need to see your phone for 15 minutes? So sometimes I have success with that. Sometimes I don't. But the thing that's interesting is, to me, is how much is being missed in all these different meetings, in all these different companies, when people are speaking and someone is checking their email. And the last point I want to make is that what I try to suggest to people is that in this framework of Scrum, the team are specialists. So you may have a software developer, and you may have a UX designer, and you may have a graphic designer, and you may have maybe a content person or a database person. So they have specialties. But we talk about generalized specialists in that as a team, everyone that can do everybody's job. And the idea is to pitch in and help each other to reach the end goal. One of the things, I think one of the things that becomes apparent is this behavior of looking at your email when someone else is speaking who has a different specializations. In other words, in a daily, maybe a software developer starts to talk, and a UX person will start looking at their phone or staring at their email. And I think there's a correlation between that and this idea that we're programmed to be in certain roles. So the idea is I don't have to listen to what this person says because they're a software developer, and so they do something different than my role as a user interface designer. So what they say has no interest to me, so therefore I can take off mentally for that 30 seconds or 1 minute or 2 minutes while that person speaks. And I think it's indicative of a bigger it's it's a it's symptomatic of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem is that in organizations we've become so role driven and so specialized that we no longer are capable of really operating as a team of generalized specialists that moves forward to accomplish a single goal. And it may appear like that, but I think on the inside, I think it's all role driven. And because of that, I believe that there's a lot of inefficiencies within organizations. And I think that's where a lot of the communication barriers come from and how balls get dropped, because people listen based on whether or not the role has value to them in their role. That would be my last point.
And thanks, Bob, for sharing.
You're welcome. And I hope